He grew up in a trailer without electricity, ate canned food by flashlight, and dreamed only of stability. But after 15 years, this happened. An inspiring story that could happen to anyone. No one expected anything special from him. Not his neighbors, not his teachers, not even some of his relatives. Born in a small, dirty trailer on the outskirts of Jacksonville, Florida, he knew from childhood that life was not a smooth road, but a struggle for survival. There was no light in the trailer. In fact, there was no electricity at all. His mother was constantly running away from debt. His father disappeared before he was born. In winter, they slept in coats. In summer, they opened the windows to breathe. The only luxury item in the trailer was a small pocket flashlight that ran on batteries, which they saved like gold. He was 7 years old when he saw a laptop for the first time. Not at home, not at school, but at a junkyard. The scrap metal yard on the outskirts of town was his playground. And there, under a layer of dust and burnt wires, he saw something square with a cracked screen and buttons. He didn't know how it worked, but it looked like something from another world. He dragged the broken laptop home like a trophy. And when his mother asked him what he wanted with that piece of junk, he simply replied, "I want to know what's inside." He spent the next few weeks with a screwdriver, taking the case apart. He didn't understand anything, but with every move, he learned. And somewhere in that darkness, amid the tape, insulation, and wires, his world appeared. Not a world of entertainment, but a world of possibilities that did not yet exist. At school, he was the guy from the trailer. Not the smartest, not the bravest, just quiet. But his computer science teacher, Miss Branson, noticed that he never took his eyes off the screens. And one day after class, she approached him. "Are you interested in how this works?" He nodded. "Would you like to see the server?" That word was magical to him. He didn't understand what it meant, but it sounded like a door. The next day, she took him to the school's technical room. There were cables, signals, blocks, a screen with numbers. "This is the brain of everything that works here," she said. "But it's far from the most complicated thing that exists." He remembered that phrase, because from that moment on, he had a need to understand. After school, he went to the dump. He collected old motherboards. He made a soldering iron out of wires and a battery. No lessons, no YouTube, there was no Wi-Fi in the trailer. Just logic, trial and error. He was 12 when he ran a simple program on a laptop he found for the first time. It only counted numbers, but he felt something dead come to life. He couldn't sleep that night, not because of the heat. It was because, for the first time in his life, he had made something that worked. He had no friends, but he had headphones. A neighbor gave him an old MP3 player, and it was in music that he heard what he was missing: order, structure, rhythm. That's how he lived. Days, school, and humiliation. Evenings, a flashlight, metal cases, and silence. No one suspected that this quiet boy in a trailer was up to something. That from the debris, deprivation, and filth, he was gradually building an idea. But what exactly did he dream of creating? And why, 15 years later, would Amazon approach him with an offer worth tens of millions? Read on to find out. He was 15 when he decided, "I'm going to create a website." Not because he knew how, but because he had heard somewhere that you could make money from websites. He didn't have internet access at home, but there was free Wi-Fi at the city library. Every day after school, he would go there with a notebook, an old music player, and a dusty laptop that only came to life after 15 minutes of prayer and rebooting. He started with HTML, then CSS, then PHP. When you don't know anything, you're not afraid to try. And he tried everything. 3 months later, he launched a website. It was called Light Fixer. It was a service offering cheap tips on how to fix electrical problems in trailers. The idea seemed funny, but it was exactly the kind of advice he had been looking for his whole life. The website looked terrible, but it had heart. His first success came through advertising. He placed a banner ad through AdSense. 2 weeks later, he earned $4.67. It was the first money he had ever earned with his own knowledge. He printed out the check and hung it above his bed, next to his tools. "I'll break this cycle," he told himself. "I'll get out." At 17, he was already working online. He made simple websites for small local businesses, cafes, car washes. It didn't bring in much money, but it gave him experience. And then he created his second project. It was a web platform for finding available generators in trailer parks. The idea was simple. When the power goes out, people look for someone with a working generator. He posted a map, added the ability to register generators, and added a chat feature. He called the platform WatchShare. It was a breakthrough. In the first month, he had 200 users. In the second, there were already 800. In the third, the site was hacked. Someone broke into the database and deleted everything. His server was amateurish, unprotected, no backups, and everything was gone. He didn't leave the house for 3 days. Not because he was lazy. It was because for the first time, he believed that something would work out, and then he lost it again. Why am I always one step short? He asked himself. In those days, he picked up the flashlight again. He sat in the dark and just kept quiet. And then, as if by accident, a guest appeared in the trailer. It was a stranger, slender, about 50 years old, with a neat beard and a briefcase. Are you Jacob? He asked. Yes. My name is Nick Meller. I work at a technical college nearby. One of your websites was sent to us in an internal newsletter as an example of an unconventional solution to a common problem. Jacob couldn't believe it. I want to talk to you about a scholarship. Those words sounded unbelievable. We have a place. If you want, I can help you with the paperwork. Jacob was silent. He never thought anyone outside would pay attention to him. He didn't even believe it was possible to study anywhere other than online. That's how he ended up at a small technical college in Georgia. For the first time in his life, he had stable internet access. He had teachers who didn't laugh at his questions. And most importantly, he had an environment where his ideas didn't seem crazy. That's where he met Alice. She was studying environmental programming and had her own goal: to reduce household energy consumption through technology. Then, one evening, as they were discussing simple ideas for a hackathon, she said, "What if we build a platform that shows people how much energy they use and how they can save without changing their lifestyle?" Jacob froze. "And what would we call it?" She smiled. "Water." The word pulsed in his brain. Water. It was short, simple, energetic, and it was this name that would, years later, be the reason Amazon came to him. But for now, it was just an idea, and another attempt to do something that would either make him or break him. Jacob and Alice drew the first sketches of water by hand, on ordinary sheets of paper, with coffee stains and scratched arrows. It was supposed to be simple. A person enters their habits, how long they use appliances, the type of housing, and the system suggests how to save electricity without changing their comfort level. They didn't have access to large APIs. They didn't have money for designers. But they had spirit, the same spirit that drove Jacob in his trailer at night under a flashlight. And there was Alice, with a mind that structured chaos. 6 weeks later, they presented their first prototype. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. They were warmly welcomed at the hackathon. The jury praised its simplicity and relevance. And one of the mentors, a man in a knitted sweater with a Clean Future sticker, approached them after the presentation. "If you make a mobile version, I'm ready to invest in you. We'll start with $10,000. It's not much, but it's enough to keep you from going hungry," he said with a smile. They were shocked. This was their first real chance. Jacob opened a bank account. He rented a trailer from his mother in her name. For the first time in his life, he rented a place to live. And they started building with complete focus. 3 months later, Water 09 was released, a simple mobile app with an energy calculator, recommendations, and the ability to compare your consumption with other users in your city. They launched on Product Hunt. The first 24 hours, 0 installs. After 48 hours, there were 5. One of them was Jacob. Another was his mother. A week later, they received feedback. "I don't understand why I need this app. I just pay my bills." Another, "I know my dryer uses a lot of electricity. So what?" It was painful. They were trying to do something useful, but they were met with indifference. Alice was nervous. She wasn't used to this. "People aren't interested in saving money until it hurts," she said. "But we're trying to prevent the pain," Jacob argued. "That's the problem." The next few weeks were difficult. The investor didn't push, but he made it clear that they needed to test the hypothesis. And the hypothesis was simple. People don't want to know what they're spending. They want to know how they compare to others. So they changed their approach. Water became a social energy consumption platform. You enter your data, and the app shows how you impact the planet compared to other users. Badges appeared. A green rating. You could participate in challenges. For example, reduce your consumption by 10% in a week. And then, it started. A TikTok video titled, "I thought I was normal until I downloaded Water," got 200,000 views. The first complaints about comparison addiction appeared on Twitter. Ironically, this is what made the product popular. Within a month, there were 12,000 new users. Jacob sat in the same library where he had once written his first HTML code. Next to him was a new laptop. In front of him was a growth chart. "I don't know if this is good or bad," he said to Alice. "But it works," she replied. "That means we still have a chance." The editor-in-chief of a small niche publication on environmental issues, Green Future Daily, wrote to them first. "We would like to interview you. Don't worry, we're not tabloid journalists. Our readers are people who are really making a difference." Jacob didn't trust the press. He remembered how he was ridiculed on a school blog for his website about wires. But Alice convinced him. "If we don't speak up, someone else will do it for us." The interview was sincere. No gloss. Jacob talked about his childhood, the trailer, the flashlight. About water as an attempt to give a tool to people who have never had control over their lives. 2 days later, Medium picked up the article. Then LinkedIn, where a post appeared from the head of the innovation department of a large energy company in San Francisco. "A young developer from a trailer has learned to analyze consumer behavior better than our R&D team in 5 years." And then the letter arrived. Subject: Invitation to participate in the National Energy Innovation Panel. Jacob and Alice were invited as speakers at a closed event with government officials, investors, and major industry players. Alice was overwhelmed with joy. Jacob was silent. "Aren't you happy?" "Joy is when you see a limit in front of you. I don't see anything right now. Only possibilities and pitfalls." Everything in Washington seemed overly formal. Dark suits, marble lobbies, badged chips. They were placed in the grassroots innovation section. The presentation lasted 12 minutes. No charts, just simple things: habits, influence, responsibility. After the presentation, a gray-haired man with a slight accent approached them. "Your presentation reminded me of how the internet used to be about people, not data. But now the world is different." He handed them his business card. On it was the logo of a large corporation, PowerCore. "We have the resources. You have the idea. If we join forces, we can make this a national standard." They returned from the conference with a wealth of impressions and their first partnership contract. PowerCore offered to integrate water into their smart meters, which they planned to install in 30% of American households. It was a breakthrough, and at the same time, a new dilemma. "If we sign a contract with them, we'll lose control," said Alice. "They can change the product, turn it into something commercial, consumer-oriented. But we can get into every home. We can really change the habits of millions," Jacob replied. They spent the night discussing all the pros and cons. And in the morning, they turned it down. They turned down the biggest deal of their lives. It was a risk, but they promised themselves that water would remain a tool, not a hook. And then, out of nowhere, an anonymous blog appeared. Water is just another manipulative platform that collects data about people under the guise of environmental responsibility. This post went viral in an hour. Questions started popping up. Journalists got involved. Even a state senator asked for comments on the transparency of algorithms. And they realized that someone didn't want their project to grow. Maybe even the one they said no to. When you grow up in a trailer without electricity, you're not afraid of the dark. But there is another kind of darkness, informational, public, where those who fear your light cast shadows on you. This is the darkness that Jacob and Alice found themselves in. A blog accusing water of data collection went viral. It had no evidence, but it sounded convincing. The author was anonymous, signing as Concerned Deaf. Suspicions spread in the comments, and sarcastic videos appeared on TikTok. The app's rating in the App Store dropped from 4.8 to 3.1 in 3 days. Jacob didn't sleep. He read every review, every tweet. Nothing hurts like a blow to your trust, especially when you yourself once trusted no one. Alice was tougher. "We have to respond. Publicly. Lay everything out on the table. Transparency is our strength." And they did it. In a video, Jacob explained how water works, what data is collected, only what the user enters themselves, how everything is encrypted, and most importantly, that nothing is shared with third parties. "I had nothing," he said in the video. "Now I have a chance to give others something I never had, control over their environment. If you think we would betray that, you don't know me." The video was viewed by over 500,000 people. And then he appeared. Thomas Baines, tech blogger, million-follower expert on digital ethics. I don't believe in leaders without a background. But this guy, he doesn't look like just another info gypsy. I'll analyze the water code myself and give my verdict. A week later, he released a 25-minute analysis. I didn't find anything that would indicate manipulation. Moreover, the level of code openness here is higher than in many big companies. The public believed him. The rating began to rise. TikTok was flooded with videos with the text, "Sorry, water, I had my doubts." But Jacob knew it wasn't just hate. It was an attack. A targeted one. Someone powerful didn't want water to be independent. And then he started his own investigation. The trail led to a digital agency that served several energy corporations. The IP addresses that launched the original blog matched the activity of a bot network that had been repeatedly accused of mood shaping. Everything was falling into place. "It's PowerCore," he told Alice. "They played dirty. Then we'll play differently." And then there was an unexpected twist. An email arrived. "Hello, my name is Kira Tan. I am the head of Innovative Solutions at Amazon. We are interested in working with you. Can we meet?" Jacob was silent. For a long time. The name was real. The position was real. And she was active on LinkedIn around topics such as ecology, energy conservation, and local initiatives. "They want to buy us," said Alice. "Or kill us with kindness," added Jacob. But this time, it was a new level of the game. And now they had to decide. Were they ready to enter into an alliance that could open all doors, or go down the path of resistance again, but alone? The meeting with Kira Tan was scheduled in Seattle at Amazon's office. A glass building, clouds outside the windows, fresh coffee in the lobby. For Jacob, it was like stepping into a completely different world. A world where everything sparkled, and at the same time, where everything belonged to someone else. Kira greeted them without pretension. "I know you don't trust big companies, especially after the recent incident with PowerCore. However, we are different. We do not want to take your product away from you. We want to give it wings." She laid everything out on the table. Amazon is launching a new division called Ecotech, technologies that allow users to reduce their environmental impact. They need a real platform that has already proven its viability. They were willing to buy 60% of the company for $48 million, keep Jacob and Alice as executives, and roll out water globally. First in the US, then in Europe. You'll get a team, resources, the opportunity to influence millions. We won't change the essence of the product. You'll have control over the vision. The offer sounded amazing. Jacob found it hard to breathe. It was everything he could have dreamed of, even more. "But there's one condition," Kira added. "You have to stop the public conflicts. We can't have a product in our portfolio that's at war with its competitors." The world of the big players is a world of silence, not loud posts. It was a signal, a direct one. Leave the truth behind, or get scale. They returned to their small studio in Georgia, and they were silent for a long time. "You know," said Alice, "if someone had told me 5 years ago that we would be offered this kind of money, I wouldn't have believed them. And now you believe it? I believe we can change the world, but I'm not sure we want to do it with someone else's hands." That evening, Jacob opened his notebook, the same one in which he had once written his first pseudocode. The first page was covered in dust. On the second page was his old inscription, "I want to give control to those who don't have it." He stared at those words for a long time. Then he wrote below them, "Even if they don't want it." The next day, they met with Kira again, on Zoom. She was ready to sign, but Jacob said, "We're grateful, but we have to decline." Kira looked at him intently, without emotion. She knew the price of refusal. "Are you sure?" "Yes, we're not ready to lose our core." She nodded. "You're sincere, and that's very rare. But remember, sincerity doesn't always win." The connection was lost. The following weeks were quiet. No new hype, no attacks, but no breakthroughs either. They worked on new features. They added notifications about peak loads. They introduced integration with smart speakers, but it felt like the world had forgotten about them again. "We're small again," Jacob said. "But this time, we're small with a choice," Alice replied. And then, one of their features caught the attention of a very unexpected organization, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They were interested in the Energy Surge module, a system that could detect potential overloads in local power grids. "We'd like to try integrating this into our early warning system," they said. It could save lives during storms and heat waves. It wasn't profit. It was recognition, and maybe a whole new direction. FEMA does not make decisions lightly. Their proposal for cooperation was concise. A pilot project in 3 regions prone to extreme weather conditions. These were areas where power outages were frequent due to hurricanes, heat waves, or snowstorms. In these areas, even a few hours without power is not an inconvenience, but a life-threatening situation. The idea was as follows. What would be integrated with regional power grids? When the system detects a critical increase in load, it automatically triggers local alerts. People would receive recommendations to turn off unnecessary appliances, switch to backup power sources, or change their habits for the next few hours. It's not magic, but it could reduce peak loads and give the grid some breathing room, and maybe prevent accidents. Jacob and Alice agreed immediately. It was a chance to see if their platform really made a difference. Louisiana was the first region to participate. It was the height of summer. Temperatures reached 40 degrees Celsius, and air conditioners were running at full capacity. They connected the first 10,000 users. They sent out instructions explaining that this was not a test or a marketing ploy. It was a real chance to protect themselves and their neighbors. It all started quietly. The system worked. The first 2 weeks passed without incident. Then the signal came. The temperature rose, and the network began to malfunction. What activated its first mass energy surge? Within 20 minutes, over 8,000 people received notifications. 60% of them responded immediately by turning off unnecessary appliances. The peak curve on the server plummeted. The network operator reported, "We avoided a critical shutdown. We were on the brink, and it's thanks to you." For Jacob, it was more than a victory. It was a rebirth of his mission. We're not just saving electricity. We're protecting people. The news spread instantly. CNN ran a story, how a startup in a trailer helped reduce the load in Louisiana. NBC ran the headline, "Mobile app that saves lives." In Washington, discussions began. Isn't it time to make tools like this part of national policy? But again, a shadow appeared, this time in the form of political rhetoric. One senator from an energy-producing state publicly stated, "Startups cannot be allowed to have access to energy grid control. This is a matter of national security." Although Water did not control anything, but only informed users, public hearings began, where words such as vulnerability, dependence, and risks were heard. "They're afraid we'll become the standard," Jacob said. "That means we're halfway there," Alice smiled. Meanwhile, FEMA invited them to an official presentation. This time, not as an experiment, but as partners. Jacob's speech was heard by a room full of government officials. "I'm not a programmer. I'm a guy from a trailer. I didn't dream of an app. I dreamed of a refrigerator that would run all night for my mom. Now I have a chance to give that to millions. And I'm not stopping." After Jacob's speech at the federal presentation, his name appeared in political reports, not as a tech entrepreneur, but as an influencer. For the first time in history, an independent mobile platform became a tool of national importance in the energy sector. And that scared the big players. A few days after the presentation, Jacob was contacted by one of the advisors to an influential senator, the same one who had criticized water for its risks. "Our boss wants to meet," he said. "Confrontation is not the best way forward. He is offering a partnership." Jacob didn't trust a word, but he went. The meeting room looked like something out of a movie. An oak table, flags, cold stares. The senator spoke clearly. "Your product has shown potential, but you are too independent. We propose bringing you into the government program as a technology provider, with all the benefits, but under regulatory oversight. In simple terms, what would become part of the government system, with guarantees, but with a loss of autonomy. It's a trap," Alice said after the meeting. "They want us in the structure so they can control us, and if necessary, get rid of us. But we'll get the full infrastructure. Budgets. Roll out across the country," Jacob replied. And that was true. The offer was dangerously attractive. Meanwhile, PowerCore was becoming more active in the market. After their previous defeat, they created their own platform, a similar product, and aggressively promoted it in the same regions where Water operated. Their budget was 10 times larger. "This is an attempt to squeeze us out," Jacob said, "or buy us out." And then something happened that no one expected. PowerCore offered a merger, publicly, in the format of merging for the stability of the country's energy sector. The news exploded in headlines. Two forces, one solution. Watcher and Power Core, a new alliance or a hidden war. Silence reigned at Water headquarters. If we agree, we lose ourselves. If we refuse, we could lose everything, said Alice. But the decision was up to Jacob. He returned to the trailer where he had grown up. He went inside, sat down on an old cot, and took out a flashlight that was still in its box. He turned it on. The light was dim, but it was his. I didn't create this to sell, he whispered. I created this because I had nothing. And now I'm not going to give it to those who have everything. The next day, Water published an open letter. We will not merge. We will not sell out. We believe in the power of the local, in simple solutions for simple people. And if we have to, we will walk this path alone. The letter garnered millions of views. It was reposted by musicians, actors, and even some politicians. For many, Water became a symbol of resistance to centralization. But with support came consequences. Access to government tenders began to be reviewed. New independent investigations appeared in the media. Financial pressure intensified. And then Jacob took a step that no one expected. He announced a crowdfunding campaign. The goal was to raise $5 million to maintain independence. The fundraising platform was launched at 9 a.m. sharp. Instead of glossy ads, there was a video of Jacob sitting in a trailer with a flashlight in his hands. I'm not a businessman. I am you. I know what it's like to have no choice. But today we have a choice. Help Water stay free. Not for us, for everyone. In the first hour of the campaign, $27,000 was raised. In the second hour, $105,000. By the end of the first day, over $500,000 had been raised. Social media exploded. I'm not an investor, but I donated $20. Because this guy deserves it. My grandmother saved $80 on electricity thanks to Water. It's the least I can do. Bloggers, opinion leaders, and even several IT companies joined the campaign, symbolically. 4 days later, the amount exceeded $2. $3 million. And that's when the glitches began. The campaign website crashed from time to time. Payments were blocked. People received false rejections. Water's technical team checked everything. The servers were working steadily. It was interference. After technical analysis, it became clear that the DDoS attacks were coming from botnets linked to the same digital agency that had previously attacked the company's reputation. PowerCore denied everything, but their silence spoke louder than any statement. To circumvent the attacks, Jacob and his team set up mirror platforms, transferred payment processing to several new gateways, and even enlisted the help of the open-source community. It was now a war, not for money, for trust. On the 6th day of the campaign, the amount reached $4. $8 million. And then, unexpectedly, a new player entered the fray. Blue Grid, an independent energy initiative from Oregon, offered a strategic partnership. No interference with the code, no purchase of shares, but guaranteed funding of $1. $5 million if Water remained independent. Why are you doing this? Jacob asked. Because we also chose freedom once. And we don't want to be alone in this. With this news, the campaign took off. The total amount exceeded $6 million. More than 140,000 people became co-investors, each with a vote in key decisions. It set a precedent. A people startup. A company that couldn't be broken by money, attacks, or pressure. But there was one last barrier ahead. PowerCore filed a lawsuit. Water infringes on patents, uses similar algorithms, and harms the energy market. It was a desperate attempt, but not without a chance. The legal machine was already in motion. They don't want to win. They want to drag it out. Wear us down, said Jacob. What do we do? He smiled. We'll show them what it means to have 140,000 friends. The hearing in the case of PowerCore versus Water Incorporated took place in the federal court of the District of Columbia. The press was waiting for a sensation. The courtroom was packed. In the front row were lawyers, investors, environmentalists, and tech bloggers. In the second row were those who had invested $10 and called themselves Water people. Jacob sat between Alice and the lawyer. He looked calm, but in his chest, another story was pulsing. The story of a boy with a flashlight who sat in a trailer and dreamed of light. PowerCore accused them of using similar optimization algorithms. The lawyers pressed them. They presented diagrams, formulas, screenshots. Your client copied our system, said the PowerCore lawyer. He just wrapped it up in pretty packaging. Our client grew up without electricity, replied Water's lawyer. He had no access to your diagrams or your budgets. But he had one thing, an understanding of the needs of ordinary people. And that can't be copied. On the third day of the court hearings, there was a surprise. One of the technical experts called by PowerCore publicly admitted. In fact, Water implemented the same idea that we once discussed but never implemented. Their code is independent and even more efficient. It was a blow. And at the same time, a verdict. 2 weeks later, the court ruled. No patent infringement has been found. Water Incorporated is an independent, legitimate, independently developed platform. When Jacob left the court, he was greeted with applause. But he didn't raise his hands. He wasn't happy. He just looked up at the sky, for the first time in a long time, without a shadow of a doubt. A year passed. Water was installed in 3.2 million households across America. Over 22% of users reported a 15% or more reduction in their bills. FEMA integrated the platform into the federal warning system. And then, a new letter. Hi, this is Kira Tan. I'm no longer with Amazon. I'm now heading a new global fund to support independent infrastructure solutions. And if you're still interested in working together, I'm ready to be on your side. No merger. No strings attached. They met at a rooftop cafe. Kira looked at Jacob not as a product, but as a person who had stood his ground. I knew you'd refuse. But now you're ready to dictate the terms. We want to invest. On your terms. Water wasn't sold, but it got the resources it needed to expand into Europe, Latin America, and Asia. And most importantly, it retained its essence. The final video they recorded for all their investors was short. Jacob sat in the same trailer. Now it was like a memorial office. Behind him was a flashlight. Light isn't about bulbs. It's about choice. I had it. Now you have it too. And know this. Any story isn't about where you started, but about not giving up until the very end.